Good morning, Coffee Time, Shine Campus, and the YouTube channel. Hope you guys are having a good morning. So, if I don't have any guests, I think I'll be talking about myself. But one of the things I wanted to talk about today was some sneaky abusive traits. And so, I'm not with all the concepts of like creating a buzzword or just naming something so that people could have a reason to label people. That's not what this is about. What it is about, though, is noticing and understanding like what some of your own hardship would be and the reason that it would be that way. So, um, the concept of secrets, right? So, what's interesting is secrets seem so, and this is probably like this with a lot of different situations. Like secrets seem like such an innocent type scenario, and in so many cases. And to be honest, they are. It's not like there's absolutes for the idea of secrets. Like sometimes there's things that you don't talk about, and sometimes there's things that you don't share. Um, but overall, like what I want to talk about today is secrets that um, how secrets end up being an abusive type of interaction, right? And so abusive doesn't mean that you're necessarily being abused, but it's an abusive interaction. And I hope that makes sense because your body, even if you're not necessarily being abused, your body can recognize what that abuse scenario is like. Um, so anytime, and this does happen in abuse, anytime you have to put your hand over your mouth or there is a figurative hand over your mouth, that means that you are kind of bound to confidence or bound to secrecy, um, which again, like I said earlier, there's some forms of that where it's necessary or where that's part of what you do. But overall, when you are bound to secrecy, it makes a certain kind of situation. And so one of the things that I think happens is it puts you in a dilemma. Like, how am I going to do the next thing in my life? And from an abusive standpoint, the abuser stays in control this way, right? And so that's what makes it dangerous. Is the abuser stays in control because you're at a point where you don't want to hurt a certain situation, and then at the same time you don't want to um, lose whatever's on the line from the abusive person or abusive scenario. So you get in that dilemma, and in that dilemma, there is an idea that says like on the inside you're the one going to have to struggle with that situation. Okay, so what does this look like, in real life? Well, I mean, it could look like as much as a friend telling you like, and it's interesting that it would come from a friend, right? It could look as much as like a friend telling you, "Hey, I got this scenario going on in my life, but don't tell anybody," right? And you could want to keep that situation confident, but what if it hinders a certain part of your life, or what if it threatens the outcomes for other people, right? What if those are the scenarios? In those situations, it starts, um, it starts feeling like to the body that that it is an abusive scenario, right? That it is hard. So I don't know where the line is for everybody as far as like what secrets to keep or what secrets um, are not abusive. I don't know that line for everybody, and you'll have to measure out those things. But if you notice, and I think let's look at it at two angles. Like let's say if you notice for you that that's a tendency for you is to keep secrets, ask yourself what the reason is. Like what's the reason for not being transparent? And so if you're doing the things that you're supposed to be doing in life, and that might even be an unfair statement, the things that you're supposed to be doing. But just think about it. While you're doing the things that are honorable, that are creative, that help other people, while you're doing all those things, where would the secrets be? Right. So if you ask yourself that, then there might be less that you are secretive about. And I'll just use me as an example. There are some things in my life, and I feel like I kind of grew up with secrecy, but there are things in my life that I really feel like um, is are things where I can be more open about and talk more about. And um, again, this is one of those lines that I think is hard because of the way that I grew up, in privacy, and what goes on in my house is mine, and those types of things. But there's a certain amount of opportunity for us to say all the things that are going on and to be transparent. Um, and the more that we are able to do that, we actually can have an opportunity to benefit others. The flip side of that, though, for me, is that sometimes when you tell everybody what it is that you're doing or what it is that you're working on, you get a different kind of influence that you don't want to have. And so, even in that scenario, like there's a certain component of, if we're talking about abusive scenarios, there's a certain component of abuse that we're trying to avoid. But do you see how that secrecy, the idea of concealing, like all of that is kind of, they end up being in there together at some rate, right? So to me, that's one aspect of being able to look at it, is how you use it and what's it for. And I want you to challenge yourself to look at it and say, what am I using it for? What am I using secrecy for? What are the things that I'm saying or doing that I need to hide? And then go back and see if you can do more things that are transparent. I don't know that transparent's the goal as much as not doing things that I have to keep a secret about, or giving me opportunity to um, build on different things, is probably the most important piece. So it's less about you being transparent and about everybody knowing all of your business, and it's more about you being able to say, I'm doing all the things that I need to do, uh, and at least I can tell the people who are close to me. All right, so that's one side. What are you doing? The second side is what are other people doing? And so what other people are doing when they're using secrecy in your life is really important too. So can you pay attention to and see what the purpose is? And sometimes their purpose for having this trait is different than what you're experiencing, right? So somebody may say, your friend may say, um, I don't want to tell my husband a certain situation yet. And so can you keep this a secret? And so then you keep the secret, and they say, hey, you know what, I'll let them know a certain time. Okay, like, maybe that's the situation. There are other situations though that may make it hard for you because they never plan to tell their husband, and it's a hard situation for you to maybe watch, right? um, and in that scenario, there is something that maybe you can bond around initially, but overall you're holding on to somebody else's hurt and pain, and that starts to wear on the body the more times that you have that in your life. And so paying attention to the reason that people are asking you to hold on to certain secrets and conceal things and not be open and not be honest is a useful consideration whenever you're talking about the ideas of secrecy. I think that the further somebody gets away from you, the easier it gets. Like if I'm not close to somebody, then it's no big deal. I can. It's not even my business to tell or not to tell, right? But whenever that person is close to you, then you start caring more about what they'll experience. You start caring more about what other people around them will experience because it's so close to you. And I think that that's how the abuse um, starts happening, because we know more, right? We care more. And so anytime those are the situations, that makes it challenging. So then here's another situation whenever it comes to somebody else, and this is the one I'll end up on, or I'll end on. Um, a lot of times somebody is out to hurt you or not looking out for your best interest. And so when they're not looking out for your best interest and you have to keep a figurative hand over your mouth, the one thing that does away with abuse is the idea that we can talk. And it does away with abuse for two reasons. One is the abuser can't abuse if everybody knows, right? Once everybody starts knowing, especially when you're in the right circle, abuse stops. They bank on you not being able to say anything, right? So as long as you haven't said anything, or as long as you don't say anything, or as long as you're under that haze, or the idea that says I can't say what's going on out loud, the abuser continues to be able to have the advantage. But as soon as you put transparency out there, then the abuser doesn't have that same control anymore. And so it's up to you to be able to have that conversation so that those scenarios aren't happening. The second part of that situation is that if you're able to express what's going on or what has gone on when you're the one being hurt, if you're able to do that, your body actually needs that as a part of its filing system for the trauma of abuse, right? So if you could have conversation about it or say it out loud, which this, by the way, is one of the more challenging. If somebody is hurting you and asking you to keep a secret, uh, that's a super challenging scenario. It's not as easy, um, and maybe easy isn't even the word to use, but it's really challenging to be able to say this is going on and this person is hurting me, right? That's a challenging scenario. So as soon as you say that, though, the body is able to be free, and that's a component of our being, is our bodies actually want to be free and not to be silenced. We weren't given secrecy as an initial sense of abundance um, and get to all the things that we need to type scenario. That's not what we were given. Matter of fact, that didn't happen until later, whenever there's shame and hardship that starts entering into the world, right? So secrecy is not something that means goodness in our bodies. It doesn't even match. So the more that we can be transparent and discuss what's going on in our lives, the more useful it will be to ourselves. Okay. So those are the three areas that are on my mind as far as, what it looks like um, to experience secrecy. And so let's just talk for a moment before we take off what it would look like to unlock that a little bit. So one of the words that Brene Brown said that I love is brave. I think that is a starting point a lot of times, and simply put, to be able to do something different. And can you start living inside of you a transparent life and knowing how you feel? So knowing where you want to be in any moment is as important, because what happens is, if you don't know where you want to be, you accidentally start putting yourself in the umbrella, or under the umbrella of other people, right? And so when that happens, you are accidentally following. And if I follow somebody, then I might accidentally be in their secrets or whatever it is their practices are, right? So the first thing is to really be brave and acknowledge where you want to be versus where somebody else is, and then be able to say when it's time for you, I'm not. That's not my secret to keep, right? And that's a really hard setup, but it makes things easier if you could set things up like that. I'm not keeping secrets. That's not what I. It's not what I do. And then the information that comes to you either will be something that you can say, or it will be something um, that is not. It won't require you to keep the secret. So I think that's useful if you can set things up that way. The other part is being able to confront, and sometimes this is one of the hardest things to do, but being able to confront the abuse in one way or the other. It doesn't always have to be the abuser that you confront, but just being able to um, go and say like, hey, this is going on and I no longer want to keep a secret, and I'm going to go ahead and move on, start moving on and healing in my life. And so that would be the last thing, is that healing becomes a part of us getting through these situations, because one, there's probably a trigger point for us having to keep secrets and being in that position in life. But then two, there's also a situation that says there is a possibility that there's abusive scenarios going on with the secret. So the more that you can get to a place of healing and starting to work through those experiences, then the better, right? So it's no longer about keeping secrets. To me, after us having this conversation, we have an opportunity to start looking at it. We can have more conversations if you guys want to, but I think it's a useful thing to realize your body may be having a reaction to concealing, and maybe even has a habit now of keeping secrets and concealing and not living a transparent life, which is fine. It's just a matter of being able to heal that and start changing it over, and then being intentional about being as honest as you can with the people that you need to be. All right, you guys, it was good to have a conversation with you. I hope this conversation serves you, and we'll talk to you soon.